And so we go from something vaguely modern to something still, I guess, technically modern, but didn't come out in the last year. And that is Cyberverse Adventures Slug, or Cyberverse Slug. I don't remember which thing, but this is the deluxe Slug, and I really wish they had done more deluxe Dinobots for Cyberverse, because like Snarl could have been cool. I just really don't like that the entire tail just is a separate piece that you have to figure out something to do with. And like Swoop never got a deluxe. I don't think Sludge ever got a deluxe. There's like the Ultra class, but yeah. Point is, it took me a while, but I finally got Slug. And the whole reason I got Slug was because there's a store/museum in Astoria, which is a little bit out of the way, but not too far. But it's called the Museum of Nostalgia, and we were there recently because Diana was actually part of a show with artwork showcasing nostalgic stuff. There were paintings of like Ninja Turtles and some there's a really cool one with like Indiana Jones. Diana did Care Bear paintings, which are really neat. So cool place. Did some neat local art stuff. But also it's kind of a toy store too, and they had Slug here for $15. It's like, I'm gonna buy that. And yeah, this guy, barring the lack of bicep swivels, which we will see when we get to robot mode, he's actually kind of amazing. There are a couple other things that I'm kind of like on, but like overall, really cool. And it just, again, disappoints me that we didn't get this kind of treatment for Swoop and Sludge and Snarl. And like, yes, I know Snarl did get a deluxe, but it's not this kind. It was like, maybe it was a warrior class. I don't know. But point is, the Cyberverse Snarl that we got does not match the same level of like engineering and whatnot as Slug and Grimlock. But anyway, here we've got Slug, and he is a Triceratops, as you do. And I appreciate the fact that his weapons can all store together, but I definitely have my hang-ups on it too. Like, the big gun sticking out of the back doesn't really bother me. But the thing is, this big old clump, like this piece doesn't really lock in. It kind of wiggles no matter where you put it. These blast effects are neat, but like they're the same exact color plastic as this other piece, so they don't really read as blast effects that well. And this separates out and you get an axe, which is cool, but the problem with this is the entire thing is red plastic that's been painted black, which means the handle that the robot has to hold is painted. And so it's kind of tight to get into his hand. You can see that it's actually hollowed out in spaces, so it's not super thick, which means it's really scary getting this in and out of his hand. I'm worried that it's going to snap because that's, hollowed out. And because it's painted, there's that worry of paint rubbing off. So like that I don't like this as a weapon. That bums me out. This I think is cool though. I like the double-barreled spiky machine gun / shotgun, whatever this is supposed to be. That is cool. And again, you can use the blast effects, and it is what it is. I guess if you wanted to, you could also peg this on up here, which actually sits way more securely, but then you've got this sticking out, which looks a little bit weird. I feel like this looks better, but it just isn't as, like, solid. It's not as secure, because again, it's really easy to knock that out of the way. But these are blast effect, like regular blast effect compatible. You can peg them on there, peg them on there. So if you wanted to, you could have the dual blast effect with the other blast effect. But yeah, I don't really care for this or this. But that's neither here nor there, because we're really mostly talking about Slug in particular. And yeah, the Triceratops mode actually looks pretty good for what it is. There is obvious robot in there, but it doesn't really bother me because it's a deluxe. Really, it's like, I like the sculpting. It's a little bit messy, in particular, like right around here, but like that's fine. The transformation on this guy is actually really interesting and clever. thing that really kind of I'm like about with this guy is the colors. I'm fine with the colors, it's just they're a little too muted for my taste, particularly this yellow. It's like a dull mustard yellow. I feel like if this was brighter, it would be nicer. Like, we'll see more of a direct comparison later, but like you can see, this is a little bit more in line with Grimlock in terms of the Earthspark Grimlock, which we got, but like Cyberverse Grimlock was a lot brighter than this. So these two, color-wise, work pretty decently together, though Grimlock's yellow is a little bit brighter. But Cyberverse Grimlock definitely would not look right next to this guy in terms of like color schemes and stuff. But gripes about the yellow aside, the detailing is nice. The face is a little bit on the daunted, scary side, but it's there. I can open and close the mouth, and I just closed it all the way, which makes it difficult to open. You can kind of look up a bit. You can't like twist or turn, which is unfortunate, but you can adjust the horns if you want. That's more for going into robot mode. And then for the legs, the back legs are on ball joints, but they're really, really close to the body. So really, you're just going to get rotation, and only to a certain point, because there's this catch here that this bit of the leg catches on. You can kind of force it past it, but it's not really designed to do that easily. So yeah, you don't really get a ton of articulation in the back legs. The forelegs are better. You know, they're the robot mode arms, so you get some better articulation there. You can rotate this, you can move this. Also, it's kind of clever how they design this, where there's a cut in this piece back here that allows the arm to sit back like this when it's like more pressed up against the body, which I think was being done in order to make it a little bit easier to get those Triceratops arms oriented. And I like that. I still think it'd be nice if you had a little bit more articulation in the dyno mode, but you know, for what it is, it's fine. And I am actually really impressed with the detailing that they did on this guy, because like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the yellow, but there's a lot of little paint details in here, like the red lines on the back legs, which are on both sides. These little kind of highlighter pink red lines in the kind of close to the belly section, the silver on the shoulders, the darker gray in the fronts of the shoulders. There's more detail we'll see when we get to robot mode. Like, they did a pretty good job, also the light blue with the eyes, of you know, adding some added color details, like just the red on the back legs, because like these tuck up in here for the transformation, so that's really not a focal point when you're in robot mode. And this is like the backs of the robot mode legs, so it's like, I don't know. I appreciate that they added these details to the dyno mode. Now, size-wise, he is a deluxe, so he's basically deluxe size. Let's bring in dyno. Really? Why? Why you gotta do this to me? You've been behaving yourself for so many videos. Bring in Dinobot and Ova Prime, Samus, and now we'll bring in Burnout in a minute, because we have to adjust first. So there we go. There is Slug with the typical size comparisons, or size stand-ins, however you want to look at them. Bring in Burnout and Slug with Burnout. I think that's, yeah, that's deluxe. Cyberverse Deluxes may be a slightly different beast, no pun intended, than mainline, especially like 2024 mainline. Well, okay, Burnout's not 2024, but 2023 to 2024 mainline Deluxes, but they're, you know, roughly the same size. And we saw him before, but here we have Grimlock, specifically Earthspark Grimlock. And again, like, Grimlock looks a little bit bigger, but that's because he's standing up higher on two legs. They're roughly the same size, give or take. And again, the colors here match better. I do like that Slug uses a more silvery gray plastic. I kind of wish that Grimlock did that too, but he doesn't, and I can't make new plastic to mold him out of, so oh well. But I think they actually do look good together. They match color-wise definitely better than Slug would have gone with Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock, which makes me wonder, again, why they went with these colors, because like Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock came out first. Then they did Slug in a much more muted color tone. Then they re-released the Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock mold after some remolding, retooling, whatever you want to call it, to do Earthspark Grimlock. And Earthspark Grimlock's colors are much closer to Cyberverse Slug's colors, so I don't know what happened there. But point is, these two look pretty good together when it comes to like a cohesive color scheme. And of course, we've got to do our most significant and important comparison. Here is Slug with the duck tank. So before we go through the really fascinating transformation that this guy has, if you like this video or any of the other videos that I have done and would like to support the channel, I do have a Ko-fi or Patreon, links to both at the end of this video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, if you want to support without spending money, which I completely get, you could always do the typical YouTube thing of like, comment, share, subscribe, that kind of thing. Now, to transform Slug, this is really cool, especially considering the fact that this is a Cyberverse figure. So to start, I think I'll do the legs first, by which I mean the robot mode legs. So to start, going to unplug this entire gray panel from the back. It plugs in, like tabs into this red section here. So we want to kind of push up from here to untab this. There we go. That untabs. Also, while I'm thinking about it, should push these legs back up until they click into place. So we can swing these out a little bit. Split what will clearly become the legs. And kind of rotate one of them forward to give a little bit of space. This will hinge in, and then this can now straighten out. With this, you kind of want to keep this out for the time being, but the tail tip can fold in on this side at least. So now you want to take this panel and bring this down, and then it rotates around 180 degrees and actually becomes the robot mode foot. That is, and then this folds in. That is just wild to me. I love how the back, like the actual back of the Triceratops mode is just, it's the top of the robot mode foot, but you wouldn't know that. That's just really cool. Anyway, again, kind of fold this in so that you can straighten out the knee. Fold this down, rotate this 180 degrees, and then put that in. And there we have the legs all done. I'm going to rotate the waist around 180 degrees. So now we're looking at this. The arms kind of straighten out and then come out on this kind of double hinge here. Just out, straighten that out. Now some more cool stuff. This section here you can untab. There are these little tabs here that kind of sit in here, but untab this and swing it around. Now rotate this entire assembly 180 degrees. As I said, there's a lot going on with this guy. So rotate the whole assembly. You also want to rotate this assembly, the red piece, around. It does actually kind of click in, so you want to unclick it, rotate it around. And once that's rotated around, this piece can flip up again. It actually was flipped around the other way. So now it's kind of, the whole thing is kind of reworked itself so that it's 180 degrees. And as this is happening, you want to hinge the dino head back, take the lower jaw, and open it up and open it all the way up so that it tucks into the head. Want to hinge back the frill, and you also want to bring out the horns. So with all that done, you can swing this assembly up, and this will kind of settle tab into place like it did on the other side. The double hinged arms, which were down here, now hinge up and will sit in the spot where the robot mode shoulders are supposed to be. And rotate the forearms, which this is the disappointing thing, no bicep swivels, but we'll get to that. And then the little claws for the forelegs fold down to give you fists. And I wish that this kind of tabbed in, like it kind of loosely sort of tabs-ish in, or like at least stops, but like it is kind of easy to knock these back up. And I wish those were a little bit more secure. But anyway, all this done, now we can position the red piece. You want it to be about level with the waist, and then you push down and it will click in, and that will kind of keep this from rocking. It'll keep this from moving around, and you still get that waist swivel. So yeah, so you click that in place. Now for the last of it, hinge the, no, you stay there. Hinge this back a little bit more because we want clearance to get to the robot mode head to rotate that 180 degrees. And then this hinges down, and the basically there are these little tabs on the sides of the dyno head that sit into these little notches just behind the head for the robot, and that will kind of solidly lock in, or not lock in, like you can still move it, but that'll sit in there, and that is how you know you've got the Triceratops head hood in the right position for the robot mode. And that's it. Now so you can actually see what I'm talking about. There we have Cyberverse Slug in robot mode, and that transformation, for what this guy is pretty wild. I love how surprisingly involved it is, and surprisingly effective it is. He is, he's a little messy in a couple places. You got some hollowness in the thighs, and the hollowness is in the lower legs is filled in a lot by the tail, but you still have some hollowness here. But like, one, he's a Cyberverse toy, not like a legacy figure or anything like that, and two, I still am nowhere near as bothered by limb hollowness as some people are. I feel like that gets blown way too much out of proportion. But anyway, yeah, this is a really cool slug. Really the only gripe I have about this slug, aside from like the dulled colors, is his head doesn't look like he does in the actual cartoon, which I'm sure has to do with the, slide this over a little bit, with like Hasbro designers working off of like concepts and not finalized designs most of the time. Something that I believe has been clarified a couple of times on like various live streams, that does happen quite often, but I feel like that's probably why the head doesn't match. But I mean, I'm far enough removed from Cyberverse at this point that it doesn't bother me as much as it initially did when this figure first came out, and I was looking at like other videos and photos and stuff. But it is a little disappointing because like Cyberverse Slug in the cartoon is much more youthful and not as grumpy looking. But we'll see that head in more detail in a bit. Yeah, I really like the way that transformation works because it's so much more involved than a figure in this line for this, type of figure really has any right to be. And much like that Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock mold, which I will continue to defend, that thing gets way too much hate. Much like that mold, it does some really interesting and new things with the transformation, where it's still, you get the, you kind of still get the classic Dinobot thing out of it. Slug is a Triceratops. You still get a lot of the key Slug design things with like the, back half of the robot becoming the lower legs and the dino legs on the sides, the frill up here, and like the Triceratops head as a hood, like all that stuff, you still get it, but it's the way it comes together is different. And as recognizable as the design is, it's still also doing its own thing, which I think is really cool. Yes, they're faking the open mouth here, but like that's fine. Yeah, this guy is neat, and from the perspective of like how Slug normally looks, he's basically completely free of kibble. Like you got the dino legs hanging off of his lower legs, but that's kind of part of his design. So like I guess you could say that's kibble, but like that's it, because this is supposed to be here, this is supposed to be here. These are just his arms. Like it's really clever how they did all this. And muted yellows aside, the colors here are nice too. The color breakup is really nice. I like that it varies so much, even when you're just looking at individual parts. Like the forearms, you've got that silvery gray, but you also have the darker colors for the fists. And like the shoulders and bicep areas, you've got that yellow, but you've again got that stuff that we saw in the Triceratops mode with the silver for the outside of the shoulders and the darker colors for like the little venting on both sides of the front and back of the shoulder. The legs, you know, you've got a lot of color separation within the plastic, but also some paint for the shin designs, and like that paint is covered up a lot in the dyno mode, because with this rotated around, you can see like that's still available, but like the other paint detail is completely covered. So that's cool, like that added detail being revealed. There's just a lot to this guy. And then in the midsection, you also get, you know, that nice red and some paint details in here. I like that they decided to make this piece gray because it just mixes up the colors a bit again with the design. Love that. The paint in the torso all looks really good. Even I'm noticing this now, these struts that they use for the transformation to reposition the arms, they molded in this like piston design, which like, okay, these do tab in, so at least there's that, but they don't tab in super securely, which kind of stinks. But yeah, like they molded in pistons, which is really cool. I like that. It's like an added little bit of detail that really kind of, it's a neat little detail. I like that. And actually, while we're zoomed in, let's just take a look at that head. And as I said, like this works as Slug. I just don't think it works as Cyberverse Slug, because in the cartoon, he had a much more youthful and idealistic look, and he was kind of just like all the Dinobots were basically just Grimlock fans. You know, they were his groupies basically. And the reason they turned into dinosaurs, I don't know that they turned into I can't remember if they turned into dinosaurs because they were such big Grimlock groupies, or if they were from a planet that they just did that, and that you know, helped them to be more interested in Grimlock. All I remember about Slug really is that he was much more idealistic and happy than this head makes him look. This is definitely more classic Slug, where he's like grumpy and is not going to put up with anyone's nonsense, which again, it works for Slug. I just kind of, you know, would have been nice if this was a proper Cyberverse Slug head. But what is here does look good despite its inaccuracy to that specific cartoon that this figure is supposed to be referencing. The molding is great. The expression is really good. It's just, you know, again, the design and the expression doesn't really fit the character that this figure is supposed to represent. The dark helmet with the silver face and blue visor, it's a great color combination. So yeah, it's really nice. Also, as I'm looking at this guy, I really like the spikes on the shoulders here. It just makes me wish these spikes were painted as well, which I could do that myself, but yeah, like if those were silver, that would also be really nice. So he does look good. He's, you know, again, those colors, especially the yellows, a little bit muted, but he does look good. Now the head is pretty expressive, but the hood gets in the way, but fortunately you can just kind of push it back so you can access it more freely. So the head does rotate. It also does a little bit of side to side and a very little bit of up and down. So you can get kind of expressive with it, and you can kind of move it around without moving the hood, but for an easier time, you kind of want to push that back and then move it around and then push it back down. It's not the most convenient way to pose a dinosaur or a Dinobot's head, but it works. The shoulders are on these ball joints and hinges, so you've got a hinge here for that connection that can go up to about there. And then you've got the ball joint in the shoulder, so you can go up to about there. And that's pretty much as far as it's going to go, because these spikes are knocking into stuff. But I think that's enough. The shoulders can also rotate 180 degrees, and because of the shape of the ball sockets, you can kind of wiggle them a little bit for like butterfly or pseudo bicep swivel, which is unfortunately necessary because there is no bicep swivel. These biceps do not rotate. There is room for it, especially if this wasn't completely hollow like it is here, but it, it's a Cyberverse toy. It's disappointing, but it's, budgets are different for Cyberverse stuff. Priorities are different. I get it. The elbows can bend 90 degrees in either direction, because for Dino mode it bends this way and for Robot mode it bends this way. The forearms do swivel, which regrettably it's just the forearms that swivel, but I feel like with the using the ball joints in the shoulders along with the forearm swivel, you can still get some reasonably dynamic angles and stuff with the arms. The wrists don't rotate, but they do flip in and out like that. The waist does rotate, and it rotates completely freely regardless of the transformation, so that's nice. And then the hips are a little bit fiddly. So they're on ball joints, so you can get a little bit of rotation like that. They can go forward, and they can go back to about here, and then stuff starts knocking into stuff. You can kind of push it past that, but it starts to unseat itself from the ball joint. Going out is also weird. Like, it goes out fine, but it kind of catches right here, and you can kind of push past it. It's basically what's happening is there's a little lip on the inside. Let's see if I can angle this right. There's a little lip on the inside of here. If that lip wasn't there, then the hips would have a little bit more freedom to move. But you can go out. It's just, as I said, it kind of catches a little bit. And also, you can't really go back that far. Aside from that, you do get thigh swivels that go all the way around. And then the knees can bend more than 90 degrees because of the nature of the transformation. So you get some really nice knee bend there. And then the feet, because of the way they're designed to transform, it actually gives him ankle tilts, and you can go forward on them. You can't really go back. And even if you get this out of the way, like, that's as far back as they're going to go. Just don't want to go any further back than that. But yeah, the feet, surprisingly posable, especially for a Cyberverse / Cyberverse Adventures figure. So I dig it. Then can bring back his accessories. And I said my gripes about these before, but like, yeah, you can give him the gun as like just a big blaster that he carries. You can get these out of here because so he can have like a big triple-barreled gun. You can pull the axe out and give him the axe. But as I said before, my gripe with the axe is that it's painted, so it's kind of scary to get into his hand further than that. And I just worry about the paint coming off. But he can carry an axe and a gun, and it does look cool for what it's worth, but I just don't really like, and I hate removing it because I'm twisting this piece that's like hollowed out, and if you want to store this stuff, he's got peg holes back here, so you can peg the axe in either one. If you want to peg it this way so it doesn't get in the way of the waist at all, you can do that too. And for the rifle, shotgun, whatever, you can also peg that into his back, like so. So weapon storage, that's cool. It's that axe is probably, the axe and this probably gonna be sitting in a box once I'm done with this video, but this has no place to store other than just pegging it into the ports on the weapons, which I don't really count that as storage. Also worth noting, even the peg on the gun is surprisingly tight. I don't know why that is, but there. So for now, for the sake of the rest of the video, There he is with his accessories attached, minus this. And griping about certain things aside, I do actually really like this rendition of Slug. It's really cool. Missed the mark in terms of the head because, again, presumably they were working off of original concepts and not final designs, but that transformation is wild, and he is really cool for what he is. He just isn't totally accurate. But I'm also not one of those like, oh, it has to be accurate to be good types, so it doesn't really bother me. So here he is with Buzzword the Dinobot, Volva Prime as our Tall Deluxe stand-in, Samus, and then Burnout for a regular Deluxe. Let's get all these out of the way so we can look at Slug just with Burnout. So there are the two of them, and they are roughly the same height. Like, Slug is taller because of the hood, but I feel like to the top of the head, they're roughly the same height. Though, I will say, Slug is definitely a more complex figure engineering-wise than Burnout. And then, speaking of complex engineering, as it pertains to Dinobots, we of course have to bring back Earthspark Grimlock. And this is... Okay, so Slug is a little bit taller, which doesn't really work for Grimlock. Also, Grimlock's proportions, while I really actually like the stylized proportions that Grimlock has, it does make him look smaller. Even though he's just a little bit shorter, it makes him look smaller than Slug. And I am definitely used to Grimlock being the bigger one of the Dinobots, or at least on par with everyone else. So having a Grimlock that really does look smaller than Slug is a little bit like, you know, side by side, it's a little bit eh. But they do look really good together, and I still, again, will staunchly defend this design. The engineering on both Cyberverse Adventures and Earthspark Grimlock is great. It does really cool stuff. The figure looks great. He might be a little too tiny, but I don't care. I mean, heck, if they wanted to repurpose this into like a Voyager, maybe do a little bit more with the engineering, I would absolutely just gobble that up. Give me more of that, please, yes. And yeah, I mean, here you can also see even more, because of the more prominent chest, how the yellow on Grimlock is lighter than the yellow on Slug. But still, the slightly more muted tones work better with these two together here than it would have with Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock. Also, I'm hoping that Earthspark Grimlock is not going to start yellowing in weird places like Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock did, because that was a big disappointment, as many people have been dealing with lately. But yeah, there they are together. They do look good together. It's just the Grimlock looks a little bit too small, but Grimlock is also an older figure by at least a year or so. Like the basic design, I mean, this is a newer, you know what I mean, the original figure that this guy pulls from. That's just a remold of, it's, you know, that original figure was at least a year or so ahead of this guy. But anyway, that's how they look together. And then finally, for our final and most important size comparison, here is Slug with the duck tank. I feel like I've said as much as I wanted to about Slug already, but just to recap, Slug is actually a really good figure. And I'm not even as bothered by the muted colors as I originally was when this guy first came out. I think some of that has to do with just time, getting used to it. Seeing it in person definitely helps too. And I don't have to worry about how different he is next to Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock, because I don't have Cyberverse Adventures Grimlock anymore. And yeah, it's aside from the lack of bicep swivels, I really like. Yeah, I can complain a little bit about the muted colors, but it's really not that bad. It's really just the bicep swivels. I wish he had bicep swivels, but again, you can kind of work around it, and it's not that bad not having them by, because you could still get reasonably dynamic with him even without them. Whether or not that sentiment carries over to Studio Series Bumblebee movie Shockwave is another matter entirely. I still have not decided if I plan on getting that guy. It's so strange to me that they decided to just forego bicep swivels on that guy. It doesn't make sense, but maybe we'll eventually get an upgrade kit. I don't know. But we're not talking about Shockwave. We're talking about Slug, and Slug is great. It's shockingly good for what he is, and for getting him for like $15 was also really nice. But that is enough about what I think of Cyberverse Slug. What do you all think of this guy? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and next video we're going to be looking at another thing kind of from the backlog. So don't expect anything brand new.